Welcome to Exceptionally Speaking, the podcast where we explore how to better understand and support exceptional learners. I'm Dr. Meryl, and each week I sit down with dedicated educators, parents, and advocates to share real strategies, inspiring stories, and moments of hope. If you're enjoying these conversations or learning something new, please be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. On this episode, I'm thrilled to welcome my colleague, Dr. Joanna Ross, to the show. Dr. Ross is the former Assistant Director of the Center for Urban Education at the University of Northern Colorado, where she helped lead a paraprofessional-to-teacher pipeline program. She currently serves as a gifted and talented curriculum specialist in Denver Public Schools. With 15 years of experience in education, she brings deep expertise and a passion for serving marginalized populations. Dr. Ross recently earned her doctoral degree in educational studies, also at UNC, where her research focused on the barriers non-traditional students face when pursuing a teaching degree while working as paraprofessionals, as well as the sociocultural influences that shape their teaching philosophies, with a particular emphasis on culturally responsive pedagogy. In this episode, we'll discuss Dr. Ross's journey into education, especially her roles in gifted education, and we dive into her research on the paraprofessional-to-teacher pipeline. You'll hear how this innovative approach supports paraprofessionals in earning their teaching certification, strengthens the support system for exceptional students, and creates more inclusive classroom environments. From the challenges of navigating higher education to the victories of those who successfully transition into teaching, Dr. Ross offers powerful insights on cultural responsiveness, equity, and the importance of representation in education. You can find more information about Dr. Ross and all our guests at hex24press.com. Please enjoy Exceptionally Speaking with Dr. Joanna Ross. Hey, Joanna, it's so good to see you. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
Hey, thank you for having me.
I am so excited to talk to you. I have a lot of questions around the work that you've been doing recently and finishing your doctoral program. But I would love to start with just a little bit more about you. Would you mind just telling us who you are and really what led you into working in education at all?
Absolutely. So, Joanna Ross, Dr. Joanna Ross now.
That's right. Yeah.
And um, I have been in education for, I think, 15 years now, 12 of which as a classroom teacher in the secondary setting. So, teaching, I've taught everything from sixth grade to really 10th grade was kind of my focus there. And I grew up in New York City with four siblings and come from a family of nurses and teachers. So I actually always thought I'd become a teacher when I think I was in the fifth grade when I first thought to myself or said out loud, I'm going to be a teacher. And that's because I had the best fifth grade teacher ever. And I wanted to be her. And then as I got older and was actually making a decision in college, I thought to myself, teachers don't make any money. I can't actually do this. I need to think of something else that I want to do with my life. And I had danced all my life, like ballet, tap, jazz. So I told myself that I was going to go to school for athletic training and then become a physical therapist because then I'll be able to live life comfortably. And literally within the first semester, I was like, boring. Hate this. I'm not excited about this. And I changed my major. My friends and I will always joke like I'm not a huge sports girl. So whenever I do end up watching something sports related on TV or at a game and you see the athletic trainers running out on the field to help, they're always like, can you imagine you doing that? I'm like, no, that's just so many hours watching sports. No. So long story short, I did end up changing my major early on. Like I said, within, your first semester is just like your basic English, math, what have you. So I started taking like intro to ed and all those courses starting in my second semester. And it wasn't really until then that I realized that this was the right choice for me, but then also realized just the excitement that comes along with education. And I had even told myself, well, I don't really want kids, so it doesn't matter that I'm going to be a teacher because I won't, I need the money to do that. And then now, working in a state where I do feel, and for a district where I do feel teachers are paid well for the time that they put in. I just never would have imagined that all those years ago. So I made the decision in the fifth grade that I was going to be a teacher, followed through in college. And I knew by the time I was in high school that it wasn't going to be elementary for me. And then just along the way, there's so many realizations I had. As I mentioned, I have three siblings, and reflecting back, I'm the only child of my parents that was born here in the United States. my three siblings were born in South America, and 50% of us pursued college. I'm the only child of my parents that graduated college with a bachelor's degree. And then, of course, obviously, then went on to get my doctorate. And it is so interesting to think about how later on in life, my two siblings that kind of struggled in school behaviorally to a degree, later on in life were diagnosed with other ADHD, and then my sister OCD and ADD. So it is interesting to think about, had my parents really known how to navigate systems in New York City and in public education, the help that my two siblings could have received if they knew the avenues that they had. Also considering that, again, my older sister is 9 years older than me. So she moved here and she was in the third or fourth grade. They're already testing at that point, and she doesn't speak
Mm-hmm.
English. So
Mm-hmm.
my brother was young enough where we're all 3 years apart. So 3, 6, and 9. So if I was born here, he would have started school here. But yeah, my two older sisters starting school and not speaking English, that was interesting. And then always also coming from a family with like Caribbean backgrounds, there really isn't discussions in Caribbean household about like your mental health, about like ADD. What are you talking about? Like, no, you're being naughty. You're not listening and you need to listen. All of that is also stuff I realized way later on in life, like not even, I would say within my first 5 years of teaching, had I really put some dots together about my siblings and about the support that they didn't get and about the support I wanted to make sure I was providing to students and families.
Even though maybe a realization later in your career really impactful in how you were approaching student support. So it's
Mhm.
interesting. I wonder too, as you started teaching, did you start teaching in Florida? Was that
Yes, correct.
okay? And so when you were teaching in Florida, what was your experience with teaching gifted students and kind of the difference
Yeah.
between your approach not thinking about gifted students and then once you did have more gifted students?
Yeah. So when I did my student teaching, the way my university organized this was we had an opportunity, and I really don't remember the full details of how this kind of rolled across my email, but all my other friends were kind of just placed. And I received an email that said basically, there's a school. It's the school, the first school I ended up teaching, where we could interview with three teachers at that school. And it would be kind of a decision where I would rank who I wanted to do my student teaching with, and they would rank the students that they wanted. And it was, I mean, to my knowledge, it was only three of us that had this opportunity. Again, zero clue as to how that panned out. I did my three interviews. I spent, time in classroom A, B, and C. And truthfully, I chose classroom A, which was the classroom I ended up in, which was a self-contained gifted education classroom, because I liked that teacher the most. She's still my friend to this day. But I thought I am going to mesh well the most with her. And I think I can learn a lot from her.
Mm-hmm.
So thankfully, teacher A also chose myself. And that was the first time I was introduced to gifted education. As amazing as my undergrad experience was, there was no focus on gifted education in my program. And I do remember going to a seminar once, and the speaker asked, well, how many of you are considering gifted education? And there were a lot of hands that were not up, a few that were. And I remember the speaker saying, really? And I was like, what's this lady getting on about? Like, can we move on? Like, what are we talking about? And now I understand why she was like, really? Like, why wouldn't you want to work with this population? So inquisitive and funny and challenging and, just all the excitement that comes along with teaching gifted students. So I end up doing my internship, and that is really where I learned it. I'm so grateful because it was, I mean, immersion for lack of better,
Yeah.
you're thrown into it. And I had to learn what giftedness meant. I had to learn characteristics and how to support students, and not just the academic challenges or pushing myself to support them academically, because I mean, probably all of them are way smarter than I was. But then also the emotional piece to it, where I think initially my thought was, "Oof, this kid is emotional," And my initial thought was, well, they're a middle schooler. They're just going through changes, which is
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, that's true. But there's also this other level that I just had no idea about. And just to provide a little more context, it was self-contained, but she taught all grades. Like, so she taught eighth grade gifted, seventh grade, and then sixth and seventh grade mixed because of just numbers, and then one non-gifted sixth grade class. And then I started paying attention and realized, okay, now I'm starting to see some differences between teaching non-gifted sixth grade and the gifted sixth graders. I'm like, okay, some of this is starting to become a little bit more clear, because I think that would have been hard also to see had I only had gifted students, being someone who had never taught before. So that was
Right.
also nice. But so yeah, that was my introduction to it. Then after my internship, I ended up teaching eighth grade US history, non-gifted. And then a position opened up on that team and I jumped at it because, again, my friend was still working on that team. I was excited to be there. And I was like, I want to kind of get back into that work. So
Absolutely. Yeah, that's so interesting, and really how wonderful it is that you got to have that experience as you were finishing your teaching program, because I know for myself, I really didn't have an introduction to gift education until I was out teaching on my own. And as you know, it's in your face. And if you do not deal with the gifted students in your class and you do not meet their needs, it makes it way tougher, way tougher.
yeah.
So it became a big red flag of like, no, this is not something you can ignore. You have to figure out how to meet these kids' needs in order for the whole class to be okay. So after teaching in Florida, you eventually moved out here to Colorado. Is that right?
So yeah, I moved out to Colorado. And that's when I made the switch from like middle school to high school. And I had already had some, just going back to my friend who was that initial supporting teacher
Mm-hmm.
throughout my internship. She was actually working on her doctorate. So that plays a huge role as to why I then pursued mine. So she was working on her doctorate. I remember like day 3, she was like, wow, you're really great at this. Here are my keys. She's like, I'm always late. So I'm just going to give you my keys so you can get into the classroom and set up and whatever. And so I remember throughout, the rest of her doctoral program, kind of talking about like, oh, what is this about? And just seeing her go through her process. So I already had like the seed kind of planted that maybe that was something I wanted to do. Pursued my master's in Florida. So probably 5 years after I finished my bachelor's, I did my master's, learned a ton. And I was like, wow, this is really cool because I've been teaching for 5 years and I've learned so much that, it's like pretty much thought like I can just learn even more if I do a doctorate.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I was correct in that thinking. Yeah, so that was, some time still, another, I don't know, maybe 6 years or something went by before I moved to Colorado. I had a lot more exposure to um multilingual learners here in Colorado than I did in Florida. I mean, there's a lot of Spanish speakers in particular in Florida, but just the area I was working in, I didn't have a lot of experience really digging into the nuances of MLL work. So that was interesting and fun. Like, coming into Colorado and working in a district where one of the first things you have to do is go through coursework that is about language and how to support language learners. So that was huge. And then I loved the school I was working in. And that for me was just more motivation to want to learn more about education. So I think my like desire and decision to earn a doctorate really is just rooted in my desire to continuously grow and get better and get smarter at what I do. So I applied to my program in 2021 and then just kind of both feet in, because I actually was looking in June of 2021 and I emailed the program director asking a question about the program. And she said, we're starting a new cohort next month. If you really want to do this, like you need to send me this, this, and this, and we'll get you going. And I was like, yes, I can be rather impulsive. So,
Almost an
yeah,
identical experience. Like, I reached out during the
really.
summer about my doctoral program. They're like, we're starting now. So like the cohort
Yes.
starts now. If you wait, it might be a couple years to get into the cohort that you want. And yeah, so I'm like, okay, let's do it. Yeah.
Right, right. Because I had interpreted the program to have a rolling start of like fall, spring type of deal.
Yeah.
But that was for if you were in person on campus. And I was like, no, I'm really looking for the remote option. And
Yeah.
so yeah, she was like, yeah, no, that starts once every summer and we're starting next month. I was like, okay.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah.
So now that you're finished with your degree, is it a curriculum instruction degree? What's your actual title of your degree?
It's titled Educational Studies. So it's and the focus is on innovation and reform. But I would say it was very curriculum heavy. We spent a lot of our assignments kind of looking at um, curricula and diving into theories behind various, approaches to education. So I would say that it was very focused on and philosophy.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so when you started the program, did you have any idea of the avenue you would take for your research?
Yes. So that was part of like the interview process for it. I had to kind of come up with a mock research that I would do. And I actually was interested in like advisory programming. And part of that was rooted in every single school that I worked in. I just hated the way advisory was set up. I was like, this is a waste of my time. This is a waste of students' time. Nothing's getting done. We've turned this into, well, work on your homework. And then when they don't have homework or they tell you they don't have homework, they're just hanging out. So I really just kind of wanted to learn more about where did this come from? And what was the initial ideas behind this? And how have we strayed away from it or how has it evolved? So that was actually what I started with. That was what I like proposed during my interview process for the program. Had just started working at a school that was actually changing how they do advisory. It was going to be only for freshmen. And basically, it was meant to be like not a study hall, but like a skills, almost like an executive skills course for students, and also kind of used to build school spirit among the freshmen with the idea, being that as those students, transition to upperclassmen, that all those ideas and that kind of school pride is being instilled in all the students. So I was like, that's really interesting. So that was another reason why I thought, in my head, I was going to do some sort of longitudinal mixed method study. It was nothing like what I ended up doing, but yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's so interesting. I love to hear like what people kind of thought they would do and how it morphed. So
Mhm.
I'd love to just have you talk about what did you end up researching and what was your methodology? What was your approach?
I ended up doing a case study, a qualitative case study on the paraprofessional to teacher pipeline. So I ended up transitioning out of K through 12 education and working for a higher ed institution. And I was the assistant director within this department that was a paraprofessional to teacher pipeline program. And so that was another thing. Of course, as you kind of go through your program, I learned how difficult it would be to work with underage individuals as well as a school district. And so I was kind of like, I'm very interested in the work I'm doing right now, and it's super important. And so maybe that is what I will focus on. So that's what I ended up doing. And I'm really happy that I did because again, just opened my eyes to a different world that I knew about, but I hadn't dug deep enough into. Right. So as a teacher, I had worked with paraprofessionals. I had them in my classroom. And I feel the paraprofessionals I worked with, we did well, but it was very interesting to hear their perspectives on what their barriers are as paraprofessionals seeking a teaching certification and what they perceive to be as supports that really help them get through their programming. And also just considering that paraprofessionals oftentimes come from diverse backgrounds. Oftentimes, paraprofessionals come from the same neighborhoods that they serve because oftentimes they're mothers or um, that are seeking some part time work that also fits with their child or children's. So it is interesting to hear their stories. So many of them had just difficult relationships with higher education. I had four participants, and every single one of them started a program and then had to stop the program for a variety of reasons. Either it was they started community college and didn't understand how to navigate the higher education systeming, so they dropped out, or they started a program and then life happened where they had children, they got married, so they paused to be full-time mothers. My four participants were all four women. And so that was interesting to hear that when they came to the program that I was the assistant director of, that one of the biggest draws for them was that it was small and that the support was very direct and intentional. So they were able to come into my office or the director's office and say, I'm struggling with my financial aid. I don't understand this.
Mhm.
Where in their previous higher ed experience, it's either call the registrar who will then direct you to financial aid, who then,
Yeah.
versus we would take a look and say, well, let's take a peek at this, or this is the direct person that works with our facility. They support our program specifically. So that's the person you want to talk to. They understand our program, they understand financial aid, and they will be a better support. So,
That's
yeah.
great. That sounds like a wonderful program too.
Yeah, and you're able to do as much as we wanted to grow, there's benefit to being so small.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then we advised every single one of them. So I think there were 120 students. So myself and the director would advise each and every one of them and do graduation plans. So I think the vision to how they would graduate was just so much easier for them. And then on the back end of things, really, when I think about paraprofessionals and where they are often placed in schools, it's oftentimes, in the special education or exceptional students department where
Yeah.
paraprofessionals are pulled, right? They're one-on-one paras with students. And they're pulling out small groups. And they are supporting MLL students. So also just having that kind of knowledge on the back end of like the work that we're doing here really is going to support our students who need the most support.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, paraprofessionals are such a huge part of our public education system. And so to really provide that support to them as those who choose to be teachers can actually walk through that path and feel supported is huge.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, would you share what did you decide to title your dissertation?
Yeah, it's titled The Paraprofessional-to-Teacher Pipeline, Moving from the Margins to Front and Center.
Cool. Love it. Love it. Yes. That's not even a boring title. Most dissertations have super boring titles. I love that. So I'd love to know what you found surprising in your research and in what you ended up writing about and your outcomes. Anything pop up that you were not expecting around what this experience was like for paraprofessionals?
I would say wasn't so much of a surprise, but just the real appreciation that the paraprofessionals had for their support group. So the program I worked for was not a cohort structure, but for the paraprofessionals to see themselves in their peers. I think there was a lot of just stigma and fear that's removed when you're a 40-year-old person and you walk into a classroom and it's not all 18-year-olds,
Yeah.
you know, and they were able to share similar life experiences with their peers, which allowed them to better see themselves not only as a higher education student, but to really highlight their strengths as a paraprofessional in the classroom, as well as like view themselves as a future teacher. So, what I didn't say is the program I worked in, every student was a working paraprofessional. So they were working as paraprofessionals at the moment and then also seeking that teacher certification. So again, that's not so much of a surprise, but it was definitely an eye opener as to how much that matters. Because for someone like myself, I mean, I was 17 on my very first day of like college. So,
Yeah.
and I can't imagine how it would feel being, maybe 45 with children and walking in and you have people in the classroom that could be your children.
Yeah.
So that would be something that just I would say stood out to me was how important that was for the students that we were servicing.
Absolutely, that sense of belonging and that really partnership between peers and not feeling othered and maybe having some assumptions before you get to the classes of like what it's going to
Totally.
be like, but then getting there and realizing like, oh, I do belong here and I can do this.
And I think that's so much of a hurdle for every learner at every stage, right? Kindergartners or ECE students are crying before they walk into a classroom because they don't know what to expect. And then they see their peers and they get used to it, like, okay, I can jive with this, right? Um, that was the feeling I had when my parents moved me from New York City to Florida my senior year of high school. And so walking in, I was like, yeah, culture shock. But
Yeah,
like I'm walking in not knowing what to expect. And in
yeah,
my head, I was like, oh my gosh, it's gonna be a bunch of cowgirls and cowboys. And here I am, this like urban kid,
yeah.
you know? Um, and it just wasn't, once you find your group and you find your people, it's so much easier. So yeah, I think that was a huge, huge component. Something I wish I had dug into more with my dissertation is that aspect of motherhood
Mm,
and how that shapes. someone's teaching philosophy, because I mean that was the premise of my dissertation, was how do like the lived experience of these paraprofessionals guide their teaching philosophy, as well as what roles does culture responsive education play, if it does, and really just hearing their stories on thinking about, well, I had one participant who basically said that she wanted to become a paraprofessional because her son had an IEP. And she said it was just so difficult always navigating the meetings, understanding his IEP. She believed in hindsight, as an adult, that she probably required an IEP. Going through school, she says now learning about reading and how to teach people to read, and that she realizes that as a kid, she really struggled with reading. I mean, she realized that as a kid, but there was no additional support that she ever received. And so there were various times, a lot of her life, where she felt passed along, overlooked, and that there was a teacher that was not even her teacher that would see her acting up in the hallway, that basically got her together. And so just their stories and what they grew up with. And it again kind of linked back to me realizing about my own siblings and thinking about, my brother definitely would have benefited from an IEP. He really struggled. And when I think about like the behavioral component, it was definitely him more so than my older sister that would struggle and then would act out. And just
Hmm.
how he would have been able to shine if he had been provided with additional support and had my parents known how to navigate that for him.
Yeah, the family aspect of how to navigate the public education system is just, it's a never ending topic as we work in public education, of getting the information in the right way to parents, to families, for them to feel comfortable to ask questions, especially entering into 504 and IEP and even ALP situations, on what are your students' rights, even what are your rights as a
Right.
family. And so
Right.
it often feels like the school has an upper hand, or that it's not a partnership when you go in, and that you're not sure what to ask. I would also love to hear more about what, if any, theme came about regarding culture responsive education in relation to your research.
Yeah. I think that really does link with how these paraprofessionals really began to value their experiences growing up and started to kind of shift like that kind of idea of, I didn't have a great K through 12 experience, and turning that into, how am I going to make my students' experiences a better one than I had? And what do I need to look out for my students, right? Like, again, that participant of mine who said, um, I had a teacher say to my son, he's never going to be amount to anything, right? This child who had an IEP, and how that infuriated her, and how she felt helpless and powerless in that moment to do anything for her son. So really, for her, the future teacher, not allowing that to be someone else's experience, and really advocating for students and advocating for families and understanding what to look for. I think that's also something that's really big, is as teachers, like I am not trained in special education, like that's not my degree, but having those moments where I'm like, I wonder if there's some testing we can do for this student, because maybe there's something else going on here. Just being able to confidently express that to the people within the school system that then can take that idea and start moving with it for that student. So I think with the CRE component was really just kind of rooted in, how do I show up for my students? How do I allow my students to see themselves in their school setting? How do I build that sense of belonging? How do I build that confidence? How do I help them advocate? And those were really the themes that kind of came out for that, was the desire to allow students to see themselves, the desire to have their native language be viewed as a strength and not something that they should shy away from, or that they should, feel ashamed of in any way. So those were the big culture responsive components that came out, was really just the importance of representation and digging into that.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Thank you for sharing that. I have a couple more questions for you, but before we move on, anything else you want to share about your dissertation or doctoral program that we maybe missed?
I think that the experience of like going through a dissertation and the highs and lows, and really just understanding, like there are so many things where as I'm working on my dissertation, I'm like, okay, I don't want to have tunnel vision because I need to take in all the things that I'm learning from this, but also balancing the time and what is most precedent to the dissertation topic. It really got me thinking too about like the importance of confidence in our learners and how does that, so that was like a whole other rabbit hole I wanted to like go down. And I was like, well, I'll just put that on the back burner for now. Like, what is the relationship between confidence and like what role does it play in like how well a student does?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
even if you're not like academically very strong, if you have confidence and you're able to move forward with that, I just feel like you're less likely to fly under the radar. Right. And I think those are the students we miss a lot are the ones that are quiet and, maybe don't feel that confidence in the school setting.
Under two, just kind of back around this theme of belonging that I think keeps coming up as we talk. And like, how does belonging affect confidence? I think we can make some assumptions around there.
Mhm.
And then like you're saying, if confidence, if we could do a little bit more research and really isolate for confidence and see how much or if that does impact student growth, and could we connect it back to belonging? And is
Mhm.
belonging where we should really be living in all of this, and how to promote more belonging in the classroom, whether it's kids or adults, right? It matters
Right.
on both ends. So I know in the past year you shifted jobs, which is
Mhm.
exciting. And so I wonder if you talk a little bit more about what you're doing now and really what's bringing you hope around public education.
Yeah. So I'm working for a district now and among a team that really puts in a lot of time and effort into the identification of gifted students, but specifically trying to target marginalized communities, which is something that, as much as I loved my experience in Florida working with gifted students, there was no talk about that. It was pretty much these are the cutoffs, these are what we use. And if a student doesn't fall within that, then they're not gifted. And so working now on a team where we are able to really dig into data that would support um, the idea that a student can be gifted regardless of different head starts in life. And so, kind of addressing some of that is something that I feel a lot of pride in the work that we're doing. That is something that drives me every day to want to continue the work and to show up every day and to better understand the laws that we have protecting, that allow us to do this kind of work, but then also the community we serve and how we're really targeting those students.
Yeah, I would say that I'm super hopeful about that as well,
Huh.
and super proud of the work that we get to do and really move that forward. And we don't always have the answers of how to get there, but we're trying the things that we know have made sense in the past to other people and other districts, and that we really get to be on the forefront of making some really impactful changes for students. I mean, that's really the bottom line, is how do we affect the gifted student experience? Yeah, that's bringing me hope too every day. So thank you so much for spending some time with me today. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed getting to know your story a little bit more. And I'm just so happy to know you. So thank you, Joanna. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity.
This episode of Exceptionally Speaking is brought to you by Hex 24 Press, where education meets imagination. I founded Hex 24 Press in 2024 to uplift educator voices and provide a publishing home for myself and other educators to bring our work into the world. You can find more information about today's guests, including links to their resources and services, at hex24press.com. Thank you for supporting educators, independent creators, and small business. We're so glad you're here.